Ergonomics consulting firm. We specialize in ergonomics. We do health and safety as well. And I think we pride ourselves, I know we pride ourselves on the fact that, we're all certified professional ergonomists. We are extraordinarily passionate about ergonomics as general, but kind of just looking at ergonomics as a bridge to not just reducing injuries, but actually, creating innovation and saving money and increasing efficiencies and just all the great things we know ergonomics can do. So if you are new to us, we do host these webinars, usually monthly. We took a little bit of break after the end of last year, but we are back. And yeah, we're just all about everything ergonomics. Now, I typically run into tabbing issues. There we go. All right, and so my name is Alex Stinson. I am one of 3 of the owners of Pro Ergonomics, and today we're going to be talking about kind of an exciting topic, returning post-pandemic and what that looks like in the ergonomic world. Now, I'm touching wood. I don't know, fingers crossed. I feel like I don't want to jinx anything right now, but it kind of looks like we are maybe coming on the other side of this or coming out of the other side of this. And that can be exciting. It also can be a bit overwhelming. We have been kind of funneled for the last 2 years into a very chaotic world. And I know that chaos doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon as far as the world's concerned. But as far as the pandemic concerned, it looks like maybe we can breathe a little bit. So, I see if this can be a little bit more of a discussion or kind of food for thought on where we can go coming out of the pandemic and coming into kind of this just new work model we're seeing. So kind of an agenda, we're going to have a little bit of reflection back. There was definitely some interesting trends. There was a couple of kind of case precedent issues that kind of came up. There's just some interesting highlighting points that when you look over the last 2 years, statistically, it did not reflect anything that we were used to seeing in our kind of ergonomic demographic statistical world. So we're going to have a quick look at that. And then we're going to kind of look at what we did differently during the last 2 years as far as ergonomics is concerned specifically. And then what should we maybe try and get back to what we were doing before? And then kind of looking at this new hybrid program and where we can grow from here. So thank you very much for taking time out of your day. Just a little bit of admin stuff. This isn't probably going to be a hugely long session. I'm not sure we'll go the full hour, so I'll let you out early, so to speak. We also have Sarah Snabel, who is one of the other business owners, and she's on and she's just kind of helping field questions, and hopefully we don't run into any technological issues, but she's here to help me if I do. So you can all say hello to Sarah. And yeah, basically, if there are any questions, we'll try to answer them kind of in real time. I may come back to them at the end and just kind of stop sharing my screen so that I can address them if Sarah hasn't. And if we get a lot of questions, typically what we'll do is we will just put a pause and we will answer them offline, and you will all get an email kind of with what the question was and our response, so that we're not just kind of eating up your time discussing stuff that may or may not be of interest to everybody. So that's kind of the format that we're going to follow in today's session. So off we go. So the thing I think that was pretty interesting, obviously, was really the evolution of virtual services. I mean, we'd been dabbling, right? We do our webinars. There'd been a couple of, team meetings that we'd done. And I would say on the whole, for the average day worker, our technological virtual experience was relatively on the low scale. Whereas now, I think we can all agree that we have a lot more confidence, a lot more variability, a lot more options when it comes to what we're doing online. So what we have seen for sure, office ergonomics has gone through the roof. So that's been a very interesting kind of trend. As expected, everyone was sent home. They now had new workstations. And some, when I say workstations, I'm going to use quotes for that because some of them were at their kitchen table, some of them were on the couch, and so we were looking at how we could marry a workstation ergonomic principles without having kind of real workstation equipment. And I know we initially put out a training service that was basically like, okay, we don't know how long this is going to last, so this could only last a few months, thinking positively at the time. So let's not run out and, spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on equipment that's going to be redundant in 6 months. So it was very much about trying to look at quick fixes, kind of temporary short-term solutions to what we hoped was going to be a relatively short-term problem. And we realized that that wasn't the case. So what started out as, boxes and cushions, we then realized need to go to something maybe a little bit more practical, really. So we started then seeing people sending equipment home. You have your chair, you have your keyboard, you have things in your office. Can you come pick them up? What does that look like? So we started seeing that was kind of the next phase of what we were looking at. And now we're kind of coming into the end and it looks different again. So we'll put a pin in that one. We've also seen obviously our virtual training services, similar to what we're doing here with a little bit maybe more interactive moments and segues in there, but overall, we've definitely looked at trying to get that connection with our workers virtually, and training has been a great way to do it, whether it has been office ergonomics training for your administration staff that are working in office and at home, whether it's been ergonomic awareness training, which we've done a lot of with people. We've done a lot of supervisor work, so kind of a train the trainer situation where we train them so that then they can go and have that content and conversation with workers that are still working in-house, on the plant floor in more of a manufacturing setting, as well as, any other kind of training that we can think of. So training's definitely been an easy go-to, that the technology and the advances we've had through some of these Zoom and Team and all these application meetings where we've been able to connect without being in the same room with each other. The other trend that was quite interesting is, I would say, the uptick in proactive services. So typically pre-pandemic, probably one of our number one requests came as a physical demands assessment. It was working more reactively, looking to trying to mitigate some of the return to work and the work accommodation, work modification kind of challenges. And so we would often get, can you come in to do a PDA? Sure. Are you wanting a risk assessment along with that? So you kind of can work proactively. Financially, it's just a better bundle. So it was always kind of a service that we optioned at that time. And whether they said yes or no, the initial driving force for that call to us was the PDA. During the pandemic, I would say we've seen a little bit of a shift whereby we are getting the request for the ergonomic risk assessment. The PDA is kind of sometimes yes, sometimes they want it, sometimes they don't, but it is very much a secondary thought to what we really consider to be a proactive service. So that's been really interesting. Also, taking the opportunity that maybe while things are not necessarily slower, but there's less people kind of knocking on your door, literally knocking on your door anyways, that we've taken a bit more time for things like design reviews, which is in our mind usually a really high level ergonomic service. most of our clients that are doing ergonomic reviews or design reviews, you know, they've been working with ergonomics, have a very robust ergonomics program. And so this is kind of just the next evolution of an already well-greased wheel. We've been seeing clients that, you know, really are maybe just stepping into the ergonomic program pool and thinking already at that ergonomic design review level. So that was really interesting as well. And then there's just been so much innovation. We've done specific job coaching videos through video creation so that they could replay that to workers that are having challenges on the line, working for like stretching programs that we're looking at trying to get some kind of relief for, you know, all the static work that we're doing, because when we work at home, we don't have anyone stopping in at our door. So we can literally sit here for 10 plus hours a day if we're not careful. So trying to get some videos that we've done to kind of help with the breakup of that, and reminders, just kind of almost like safety talks, but in video form. And so that's been kind of interesting, I would say, as well. Just the whole decline in the reactive services. So from there, that's what we were dealing with when we were in it. So we were starting to see definitely huge use of virtual services, definitely an uptake in our proactive services, some really innovative thoughts and ideas for what we could do to help employees. But on the whole, you know, PDAs, return to work, that conversation, it's not that it didn't happen. It wasn't the majority kind of percentage of conversations we were having, it's great. So this definitely gets reflected, right? You start seeing this whole shift to more of a proactive service. And when we look at the statistics, it's actually quite staggering. So I don't think we've been down as low as our 2020 numbers for some time. Like, I want to say close to, well, 2006 was when the MSD prevention guidelines came about, I believe. Yes. And that was when we were roughly at our highest. So we were kind of closing on that 50% mark in 2006. And then after that, through Ministry of Labor efforts, through awareness, we started to see a shift, and we'd slowly got our numbers down to around the 38%. And then over the last few years, pre-pandemic, okay, so kind of 2016, 17, 18, you know, we started to see this up creep. We were slowly, every year we would see numbers kind of creeping up, up, up. So in 2019, we were at 44% for our, you know, sprains and strains, overexertion being the #1 event, the main body part being back. Now look at 2020. So we have Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 here, and we are down to 31%. I don't think in my career, which is, you know, we're counting in decades now, has ever been down as low as 31%. So that's kind of exciting. Sprains and strains is still the main nature, but the event has definitely gone down. So whereas overexertion was our #1 event here, we're looking at falls on same level. We're looking to kind of exposure to substances. So, and this, you have to understand, nature event body part has not changed in years. These, other than the percentages that go in these bubbles, the events and the verbiage that are attributed to them have not changed. So to see this drastic change to body systems and fall on same level, it's just a bit jarring to me anyways, because as I say, we download these statistics every year, and it's a bit, you know, redundant, I guess, other than we just get to see a few percentages change here, but we always see it be sprains and strains, we always see it be overexertion, and we always see it be back. So while we've kind of been on this, you know, pandemic roller coaster, things have shifted. And we're now starting to see, yes, sprains and strains are still our #1 nature. However, at lower points than we've seen in a long time. And our event and our body part has changed. So the fact that we are seeing a different request on our services is, I think, definitely being reflected in what's happening in our injury claims, world as well. So just very interesting kind of information. On top of that, with this whole working from home, which is now a model that, many organizations are sticking to. I know when you kind of look out at the job hiring pool, many jobs nowadays are specifying the fact that they are looking for kind of more of a hybrid work from home, kind of come into the office every now and then model. But we've also had some kind of case precedents happening, which were also kind of interesting. Maybe for us HR, health and safety, return to work specialists, a little daunting, but we had our case in Quebec. So we had an employee who was going downstairs for lunch and she slipped and fell, and this was deemed a workplace injury. So now we see this shift on our health and safety program. So just all kinds of interesting facts being thrown at us right now that are kind of setting the stage for the future to come. And how is that going to motivate, for lack of a better word, you to kind of relook at our ergonomics program, relook at our health and safety, our return to work, and kind of just be shifting, making little movements with our program so that we are on the ball. Now, what we're expecting and what we've already probably kind of starting to see, we're definitely expecting a procedural change. We started talking about it during the pandemic, and some people that realized that the writing was on the wall and that they were probably an organization that was going to stick with this new hybrid model, they already started changing things. So looking at how are we engaging with people that are not in the office, how are we doing certain components like, equipment transfer, equipment maintenance, what does our return to work look like? How do you return to work when they're already at home? Maybe that's why some of our injury statistics have gone down. And then we're starting to see this just increase in our reactive services. So getting back to PDAs, JDAs, and return to work. So when we're looking at trying to be prepared, we've done a really good job over the last year, kind of getting this new kind of work from home program started and going and maintained. And I think I really applaud everyone that I've been in contact with anyways. And I think my business partners can speak the same, in that really great efforts, very conscientious, very thoughtful. As I said, we've had some of our, some really innovative ideas and conversations on how we can just change with the times. And so we've gone over that hurdle, and now we're looking at what does it look like tomorrow, because it's not going to look like what it did pre-pandemic, and it's not going to look like what we've had and what we created during the pandemic. And it's now, we would keep hearing about this hybrid model. And I don't mean a hybrid model, I mean people are working from home, people are working from work. I mean, just in general, our program is not going to be the same. We can't just kind of shelve everything we've done for the last 2 years and just pick up our old health and safety manual and say, oh yeah, no, this is still good. Hopefully a lot of it's still good, but I think this is going to be the time where we need to kind of go down to brass tacks, down to our roots, and really start to just look at our program with this new lens, with this new kind of post-pandemic filter, and just kind of getting a feel for what did we do really well during the pandemic? Because for a lot of us, we were in tunnel vision, right? Like we had to get through this, and we were here. So the programs that were running well, we just let those run on their own. And the programs that were struggling, we tunnel visioned and we worked through. But what that meant was those problem areas got really strong, and that's fabulous. And then not so sure about these ones that were working well. And now, do these ones that were working well, do they mesh well with the ones that we've strengthened? Because we've strengthened these, again, under that different lens. So they may clash. So I do foresee this next year to be a lot of program review, a lot of auditing, a lot of looking at the procedural changes. I know we're working with several clients right now just exactly on this, just kind of building out this ergonomic program so that it's reflective of both worlds, everything that we did in the last 2 years, but everything that good that was happening before that. And so that hopefully at the end, we're going to come out with just, gold stars all around. And as I said, the fact that, yes, we may have pumped the brakes on some of our kind of early and safe return to work, probably because it wasn't as much of a driving force, because I think people were actively not wanting to be home after being stuck at home for so long. Work became a bit of a reprieve for a lot of people, but that comes with good and bad. If we had people that were legitimately suffering from discomfort and just kind of pushing that to the back of their minds because, this was their time to get out of the house, their time to feel productive, their time to kind of just breathe, I guess, for lack of a better word, and then they wouldn't have been reporting those injuries and incidents. And therefore, we may start seeing a resurgence of them once things have settled back down. So how is this going to impact work? How is this going to impact not just the office, which I think right now is getting kind of a bit of hyper-focused, but also how is it going to be impacting kind of the people that never left? Because there's going to be, for those of us that have kind of already a little bit of an administrative and more manufacturing or industrial setting, there may be some issues there with the people that have just, life never changed for us because we kept coming to work, but you guys all got to work from home. And what does that mean from a cultural perspective? But then the overflow, how is that going to impact just your health and safety morale? And that becomes a really big question because I don't like to say it, but ergonomics can often be the scapegoat when we have a poor health and safety morale. It is the gray. It is the watercolor of health and safety. There are just some, less measurable, no, not less measurable. You can definitely get them to be measurable, but for the most part, when we're discussing, discomfort in general, and we don't have a cut, we don't have a struck by against, we don't have a slip, trip, or fall, we just have inexplicable discomfort, that's where our gray comes in, and that's ergonomics. So how are we going to maybe shift and meld these two kind of work dynamics back together? And can we anticipate any musculoskeletal disorder fallout? Is there anything that we're asking when we're trying to bring back the administration staff? Is our focus going to drop on our production workers? We need to kind of just have some preparation on what does this mean to us? And for a lot of us, it may not be a lot. It may just be this whole just trying to meld things together. But for others, it could be that we have a lot of balls in the air and we are juggling. So just being prepared for that is good, and understanding that there may be a certain component that ergonomics starts coming up more and more simply because people once again are feeling kind of not disgruntled, that's not the right word, but just unsure, shall we say. So I think the first thing we can do from an ergonomics perspective is go back to what we've been good at for the last 2 years, and that is engagement. Really looking at trying to get ways of both engaging the people that, have been in the production areas the entire time, and the people that are coming back into the office, and the people that are staying at home, and still having them be one collective unit, even though their work environments are changing or looking different. So a great way to maybe look at that is some kind of worker survey. So when you look at, your WSPS, your Ministry of Labor, your MSD prevention guidelines, this is kind of one of those rare opportunities where maybe a discomfort survey or some kind of ergonomic survey or musculoskeletal survey wouldn't be a bad idea. It's one of those things that it can be a great tool, but we always caution our clients on timing because, you know, depending on, you're asking people to kind of focus on their discomfort. And if you don't have the time or inclination or even resources to deal with that, then it can often twist the perspective that you don't care. Right? It has nothing to do with the fact that you don't care. It just means that that was a lot of data that you asked for, and the results are usually well received. Workers usually participate quite well with these type of surveys. And so, but we don't get back to them. They don't hear any results. They don't hear any feedback. And so the perception is they just made us do it and they didn't do anything with it. So there's our cautionary tale. If you're going to do them, they're a great tool, but just have the time and resources. And I think right now is one of those times where hopefully we maybe have the time. If we don't, we maybe can get some more resources. But this is really a good way for two reasons. One, we're engaging, we understand that there is a work model shift and that there may be challenges for people. And so the one I have listed here, this is just a generic one that we have, but we customize this. Like, this is our generic one, and it never ever looks like this, because when we're done with our client, it's usually got some very specific questions. It could be shorter, it could be longer, but whatever the goal is for the discomfort survey at the time is usually all customizable. And so I would recommend that you do exactly the same if you're developing or considering doing some kind of worker survey. And then, so yes, so one, we're getting that engagement piece. Two, which is kind of just, a positive on the underside, is we're also gaining some baseline data, right? If we are sitting right now at our lowest injury claim rate for knee sprains and sprains in years, then maybe we could, extrapolate the fact that maybe people aren't having musculoskeletal disorders as much. And so, which case we should have some really good baseline data as far as low discomfort. That would be my expectation. And so if you start seeing red flags of high or moderate discomfort, then that may just help you navigate where you go. Right? So right now, while we're sitting there and it just seems like a very overwhelming trying to mesh all of these old, new, hybrid systems together, this may allow you to not just engage with your workers, but also to give you a little bit of direction on where your ergonomic program needs to go. So you can be very specific with what questions you ask. The other kind of component here is people have been away for a long time. And even those that have been, I think it's been a little bit a nose to the grind kind of thing. Like, we haven't, and this changes obviously for each organization. Some of you may have been doing this all along. Some of us may have let this kind of just ride for a little bit, but looking at getting at some of the discussions on where are our challenges. So this is something you could potentially customize into your discomfort survey, and you can grab that information that way. But on the realm of engagement, looking at maybe bringing smaller steering committees together and having conversations on where some of our musculoskeletal issues, could be in the, when we talk about equipment, whether we're talking about processes, and even work hardening. So specifically, if we've had kind of, whether it be field workers or whether it be administration staff that have been at home and now coming back to work, is there an expectation that we are going to have some work hardening? Now, statistics have shown that people were actually working longer hours at home than they were when they were in the office. So work hardening may not be as big of an issue as we originally thought it might be, but it's worth a conversation. Again, we're looking for moments of engagement here to try and welcome everyone back, to bring back connections that used to be there, because, this department hasn't seen another department if you had, let's say, your whole purchasing department working at home and your maintenance department has been on the floor, then how can we bring these two just back? And that may seem, whether if it's HR, it's definitely in your wheelhouse. It may not necessarily seem directly related to you if you're in health and safety, but at the end of the day, if we have this kind of common ground conversation to kind of pull together information for the purpose of health and safety and ergonomics, then we have some common ground that we can move forward on. All right. Then we have this hybrid model, which I think is really exciting for a lot of people. Like a lot of people. I think we found that through this, we've found a bit more of a work-life balance for some of us. For some of us, maybe not. Maybe it's skewed the other way. But I think for the most part, we're seeing just the need for flexibility. And it wasn't just the working from home that did it. It was having our kids doing schooling from home and being kind of pulled quite thin, and just needing the flexibility in order to manage life. So working on some of these, so we're definitely 100% going to see a continued use of virtual services. We've been working on, and I'm sure Sarah will be talking a bit about it next month, but we've been working on kind of like an online systems training service, because virtual is here to stay, and that's not a bad thing. We've got really good at it, looking at ways of gathering information, all online ways of interacting, engaging. I think we need to give ourselves a pat on the back for what we've accomplished in a relatively short period of time. If we'd asked someone to get this tech savvy over 2 years in any other time in history, I don't think it would have moved that smoothly or as well. So as I said, better use of technology. We now have apps. I know the OCAL recently came out with they have the safety app. I think they have the Office app, but there's like all these apps that we can use on our phones, and we could use them ourselves internally for our health and safety program as the professionals or leading member of that program. Or it might be something you want to push out onto your workers or supervisors and get them doing some of this assessment. There's a hazard app, there's a stress app, and I think there's an ergo app. So just exciting uses of technology, because if anything, for those of us that were maybe a little bit we won't use that word because I can't say it today, but shy of technology, I think that shyness has gone away. Things like we do need to work on focusing on that job coaching and connecting component. So just because I can't see you, making sure that, some of the ergonomic or MSD hazards are still being identified. So simply like with our home offices, how are we going to be doing workplace inspections? Is there going to be a requirement for our employees to somehow catalog and submit a workplace inspection so that we can mitigate any from work home claims? Because this woman, that claim went through. So, or are we looking at different modalities for, trying to improve workstation setup and efficiencies and productivities through kind of an MSD ergonomic lens? We're definitely looking now, for those of us that have decided to stick with the flex model of home and work, looking at now basically people having 2 workstations. How does that work? Do we literally have 2 independent personal workstations? Which means when I'm working from home, my space at the office is just sitting there empty. Or are we moving to more of one of these hot spotting kind of office setup and then working from home from an independent office? And what does the equipment look like for each of those? What does our ergonomic setup look like for each of those? And what is the budget and kind of equipment stipend that we're providing to our employees to make sure that, okay, well, what's our home office look like, but also what does our office workstation look like? And how does that kind of hybrid together? So kind of just interesting things to consider as we kind of balance these two out, because it doesn't sound, for some of us anyway, some of us are going to go back to the way it was. And that could be great. And hopefully you take all the great things that we've done over the last 2 years and integrate it to what we do now. The use of technology, the use of virtual services. It's definitely created a lot of flexibility within how we do work recently, and that's exciting. And then for those of us that are trying to balance, just kind of looking at everything we do with kind of, we want to try and minimize that injury opportunity. So, as we said, we definitely want to look at our procedures, and our early and safe return to work procedure is definitely going to be one of those that I think is going to be one of our more challenging. I mean, return to work is challenging at the best of times. We have workers that often will exceed their restrictions, and have someone, but at least you have people there saying, no, 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 you're not supposed to do this. I'm helping you with this. Remember, we don't have that at home. We don't have that kind of just work family kind of connection where we're all kind of working together for each other when we're working at home. So some of that early and safe return to work hardening without being there, that may be something that we need to kind of delve a little bit deeper on. And I know it's something that we've kind of been looking at. And I got lots of comments. Be looking at trying to figure out how we can mitigate those. Definitely, as I said, with the new Air Canada precedent kind of happening out of Quebec. Now, it's not to say that this is going to impact, the Ontario jurisdiction or any other jurisdiction that you may be from, but it is out there. And we know once it's out there that it's open fodder for any kind of claim or mediation for it to come out. Looking then again at our preparation for our health and safety training, where does ergonomics come into this? If we are going to get this engagement piece in, how are we going to bring those findings into our training? And then our management training. What is even our expectations of managing both in and at home? And again, for some of us, we already know what that looks like because we've been doing it for 2 years. We never had people leave, but for some of us that may change, maybe something that we just need to look at how we're doing. So, over the pandemic, I found there was quite a few silver linings. It wasn't all bad. And one of the things I think I found was that people were just pulling together in networking and sharing solutions. And I thought that was great. And I think that just needs to continue on a little bit further. So if you are one of these people that are kind of in one of these unique situations where the work model hasn't been defined yet, then reach out to us, reach out to others in your field, and kind of just making sure that what can we do to make this easier for our management staff, who we are going to have to rely heavily on, specifically if these people are not in front of us. But also, what does that also mean to our employees? And how are we training them and communicating what we need to happen, whether it be a procedural change, whether it be, an implementation change that we've done during the work from home, a lot, and I mean a lot of height adjustable desks systems went out into the world, and that's great. But we did also a lot, and I mean a lot, virtual assessments, and there was very few of them set up properly. So it's that type of communication and training that we're missing. So looking at filling those gaps, I think, is going to be really important in preparing for being able to hit the ground running and continue everything good that we've been doing over the last 2 years, but pick up the stuff that we had to do before and reintegrate it with the same kind of, just streamline approach. Some of the other things that I think we need to kind of just be alert of is the fact that we do have a work population that has been forced to appreciate a better work-life balance. And so we are now seeing, I believe a bill went out to move Ontario to a optional 4-day work week. And so what is that going to look like for you when we're looking at things from an ergonomics perspective in our risk assessments, where duration is a component on whether or not people are going to be injured? How does a 10-hour, 4 days a week, how does that work? How does that align with your production rates, your efficiencies, and at the end of the day, your injury claims, which obviously is something we're always going to want to keep to its most minimum. So something else that not here yet for some of us, I know some companies have already moved to this model, and actually from initial reports, it's been a positive endeavor. So we shall see, but that is something that was being brought up in our legislative community, and it could have some impact, definitely, to the ergonomic side of things. And then we just kind of, as I say, getting into our program maintenance. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time here simply because I've kind of been talking about it the whole time. And that is we've been encouraging our clients, we encourage you really to just find the things. If you just had to have an elevator talk to yourself, to your senior manager, to your husband or wife or partner, and you had to highlight the programs that you think you are running really, really well. Okay, that's great. Write those down. Write those down. Make yourself very aware of what programs are working really, really well, and then go back and ask yourself why. Why are they running well? Because you definitely will want to, as some of these programs change, to adopt, how does preventative maintenance look from the at-home standpoint? That's a good question to ask. So if you have a preventative maintenance program and that's one of the things that are working well, then that's great. Then maybe we're not having to go, up the big mountain for that program, but we want to try and still pull out the positives of what we're doing there and apply them to where maybe some of the programs we're not doing so well in. And again, the answer is asking the question, why? So the program maintenance is going to be a big one. So our implementation phase is definitely kind of going to be key, as I say. So we've had hundreds. I don't know. I'm not the one who keeps count of these, but I'm sure Jen or Sarah, we might be close cumulatively in the thousands, and that's just for pro ergonomics. But maybe not. Anyways, of equipment going out for office assessments alone. We've had this whole shift of people looking at ergonomic risk assessments rather than PDAs. I sit on ergonomic committees. The other day I was sitting, I love going to this meeting. We had a meeting, we were out on the floor. It was bad. It was not good. Like, there was a lot of head scratching on why we were doing it this way. And it was 100% agreeable that this was not what we could keep doing. And so as a committee, we put forth some recommendations. I am not kidding you when I say 2 weeks later, those changes were done. So we're starting to see all of these recommendations, whether it be from the office, whether it be from the risk assessments, whether it be from your committees, or just engagement contacts that you've been making. But we're starting to see all of these things, kind of controls to mitigate musculoskeletal disorders, coming out, and we're having to implement them now. So looking at this implementation phase, we've been doing a lot to try and kind of get things out there. And as I said, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And some of that could be because of training. So making sure that all of those engineering controls, because I'm seeing probably this last year specifically, not so much both years. I think the first year we were all kind of just winded. But this last year I've seen our clients anyways just work really hard on engineering controls. And I would love to say that's always the case, but I think, we live in a practical world where a lot of times we try and use our administrative controls to kind of bridge the gap until we can get to our engineering controls. But I would say administrative controls were almost put to the side, and it was all like jump in, get me the desk, get me the chair, get me the lift, get me the cart, get me the, but it was stuff. We were doing engineering controls at a really high volume, and that is great. We just need to make sure that the rest of that implementation program continues on. And so what does that look like? We know what it looks like. We know the plan, do, act, plan, do, check, act. We, all of our follow up processes, our reevaluate, our race, recognize, assess, control, evaluate. That's where we're at. So if you've been putting in a lot of engineering controls, I applaud you. That's fabulous. If you're planning to, I applaud you. And even if you're not, but thinking about it, that's great too. But being aware of what your program needs to do to support that control. Because I would hate, and we've seen it happen, so that's why I'm cautioning, is I would hate for all of this effort, all of this money to have gone out to purchase these engineering controls or implement these engineering controls or design these engineering controls to fall flat because we didn't see it through. And when I say see it through, all of that and what we've been taught, that engagement piece, the struggles, the breakout sessions, all of that information would come to light there if we found that our engineering controls were not being received the way we expected or wanted them to. So taking a moment, finishing up some of these things, because our trends have shown it. WSIB's trends are showing it. We are seeing a different push over the last 2 years, and now we're going to have to manage that push. So equipment standards is definitely one that a lot, specifically on the administrative side, that we're seeing. We're seeing them kind of come around, and we're tired of people just, okay, we've given you an allowance for your office. People open up the staples and they pick and choose, and it ends up being a wrong pick and a terrible choose. And therefore, then you have to spend time and money getting the assessment done, repurchasing the equipment, and may or may not have discomfort have occurred in the interim. So we're seeing a lot of people kind of just moving and coming to us and saying like, look, you're the professionals. Can we generate some kind of approved list so that when we say, here's your allowance, they're not just opening up the whole catalog or the website. Let's be frank, it's probably a website. But they're opening up maybe something internal that allows them to kind of pick. It's not going to work 100% of the time, but I can almost guarantee it'll work like 95% of the time, where that equipment will be ergonomically sound for the bulk of the population. And then looking at things like, maybe if this is kind of looking at that engagement piece, maybe this is a time, if you've been toying with the idea of looking at an ergonomics committee. Okay, when we're looking at, maybe we want someone from the at-home side to kind of be sitting on the committee and talking about ergonomics. They're not going to have a lot of safety issues, so having that person on a joint health and safety committee might not be as impactful. But if you had a specific committee for kind of ergonomics or, work from home, or however that's going to look. But this is kind of our implementation phase for some of these things, where maybe as we're moving in kind to not a different direction, but maybe a different elevation of where we were before, because we now have these 2 years of experience behind us. Maybe this is a good time to kind of build in some of these program elements that we've been so good at doing, because we've been doing great at meetings. We've been doing good at engineering controls. And so move it forward. And then this is kind of just a highlight. So I think where we're going to need to go, as I said, have that conversation with whoever, your elevator pitch, and highlight the things you're good at. But at the same time, while highlighting what you're good at, it should also highlight the areas that maybe need a little bit of focus and a little bit of direction. Definitely highlight the areas that are going to struggle with the hybrid model, so that we can start tackling those sooner rather than later. Because again, some of, the things that we did during COVID, we've kind of got solid. The things that we're doing pre are probably very solid. It's this new model. So we don't want that to go on for too long before challenges that we've already expected to be there are actually becoming a realization. I would love to see this continuation of proactive services. I'm hopeful. It's been a lot of fun the last 2 years, a lot of challenges, a lot of great projects have gone on, which is trying to solve issues in the workplace from a proactive standpoint, not from a reactive injury-based kind of claim. I would love to see that continue. If it doesn't, then we know we're kind of going back a little bit to our just what we're used to, I guess, for lack of a better word. But in doing so, what do those jobs look like? Are those PDAs relevant? Do they still apply? If it's been more industrial, then that may be a non-issue and we just need to do a quick review. But if it's definitely a job that's looking at more the hybrid model kind of work situation and workstations, what does that PDA look like? How does that adjust to reflect the new job, essentially, or at least the job model? All right, so that is pretty much it for, oh, look at that. I said it was going to be short. It wasn't, it was right on time. So I hope we will see you next month. Sarah, I believe, is doing the managing work ergonomics for a hybrid work environment. So a little bit more specific. This is just kind of more on trends that we would want to take our ergonomics program now that we're kind of coming out of this. But definitely, if you're interested, register. It's for April 26th from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. So something over your lunch hour. And I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, if I can. Stop sharing my screen, yep. And have a look at some of our things. So I'm not sure if Sarah's been, oh, hi, Lynn. No, Lynn, I know it's not a precedent. I'm just saying it's out there now. So it's something that is likely going to be revisited in future claims. So who have made claims for workplace injuries at home that were accepted. Yeah. So no, I acknowledge that. Sorry, I'm just reading questions. So this one is, could ergonomists look at a new baseline gap assessment of the organization to see where new hotspots are, where new challenges are? I would hope so. It's definitely something we've been tackling. So I'm hoping that whether, you know, health and safety, ergonomists, in-house consultant, whoever they are, I hope they realize that there's a high opportunity for gaps right now, and that this is something that should be recognized. Yes. So Keith said, I noticed that there is been an uptick in stress and overall body discomfort. 100%. In fact, just last week, I was talking to someone and she's like, I don't know. I've been doing this job since 2016 and I don't understand why I'm all of a sudden having shoulder and neck pain, but I am. And I will say, the workstation wasn't perfect by any means. So there was definitely some ergonomic improvements to be made, but we did have the conversation that, you know what, over the last 2 years, you know, even if nothing bad happened, it's been hard. It's been hard. It's been stressful. And where do we carry stress? We carry stress in our shoulders and neck. And so you put on that on everything else we've been doing. And for sure, I definitely have seen that as well, Keith, is that just overall body tension is resulting in just not necessarily an overall malaise, but a sensation that we're having some muscular disorders. All right, does anyone have any other questions? No? All right, well, I thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you being here with me today. As I said, Sarah will be with you, I believe, next month, so please join her. And if you have any questions, anything I've said that's kind of just resonated with you and you want to have a more in-depth conversation, please reach out. We are more than happy to have that conversation and at least offer some guidance at the very least on where you can go with your program. It's going to be interesting. I think we've done a lot of great things over the last 2 years. I think we've shown ourselves how well we can pivot and regroup and grow in a positive way. Because I can't say I haven't seen a program that I'm like, wow, they really dropped the ball. I don't have a client, not one client where that's the case. And so I think we should celebrate that fact. But we've done some great things, and I think they can be applied into our ergonomics program moving forward. And I think there's going to be some fabulous opportunities. And I love the way the trends are going. I love that we're kind of seeing the slightly lowered decline in claims as far as our percentages go. And I'm absolutely adoring the fact that people are getting a little bit more aggressive with their proactive program, because that's where it's at. It's where the money and cost savings is going to be. Proactive. Anyways, you guys have a great Monday. Have a lovely week, and I wish you all the best. Take care.